Right. Welcome, 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 beautiful souls, beautiful family. Just getting everything going. Just a deep sense of gratitude and love to everyone. As we get to prepare today to go into our next reading of The Secrets of Amenti, Part 2. And I have on the screen here just an easy way for you to be able to see what the next reading dates are. All of these are going to be in Pacific Standard Time. So just to kind of do whatever the calculations needed so that you can see what time it will be for you. There we go. So within this, actually move that there. Ooh, the last reading that we had was very, very special. There was such a tremendous outpouring of love for diving into this project, this reading together. And it's quite an undertaking. If you have the book, it is a pretty big book. We are going to be going through all of it. There is quite a bit in the book that is actually going to be more graphs and timelines and things of this sort that we will be breezing over much more quickly when we get to those sections. My primary hope to go through all of this is to be able to give us a little bit of a personal understanding of some of this genetic purpose that we are here for, this bioregenesis that our body is, this rescue mission plan, this sense of what is my soul's purpose and what is my life's purpose. This is one of the key things that I feel very guided and with so much love to be able to dive into with each and every one of you. Every single time, I am going to ask each of you to create your Maharic or 12th dimensional shield to connect to your higher self, utilize your own internal discernment. This is wisdom that is coming from the CDT plates, which is from our heritage. This is galactic wisdom and history. But anything that gets translated, even any of my own interpretations, as I share these thoughts with each and every one of you, please utilize your own higher self's discernment for what is correct for you, what is ringing with your inner wisdom and inner truth. If we can master this, this will allow us to read any materials that are here available to us upon the earth and to be able to sift through anything in there that might be causing us any kind of manipulation or distortion, and we can easily just skim right over that, find exactly what is our highest truth, what is the truth embedded in the wisdom, pull that out, toss out all the rest. So with that, even with this work, I invite you, I implore of you, really, this is a testing of our own internal discernment to really allow ourselves to dive into being our own inner compass. What are we listening to? What are we watching? What are we reading? What is someone telling us? And when we are in union with our higher self, with our own internal counsel, we will be able to easily be able to discern what is the truth or the resonance that aligns to our eternal flame. What is it that we should let go of? So with that, that is how we are going to start our reading for today. So I just want to just jump over to the live chat. Thank you guys so much for starting to type in. Hi, Shelly. Hi, Robin. Hi, Danielle. So happy that you guys are here. I'm just going to keep inviting and asking that anybody that jumps in as we get through this reading, please say hello in the chat. It means so much to get to say hello to you, share this experience live. So with that, let's go ahead. I'm going to stop this share. That was just primarily to make sure everybody has the next dates that are coming up. I have set quite a few on the calendar because I want to just roll through this with you guys. Let's definitely dive deep into this reading. So let's go ahead and start moving into the reading of the book here. So one of the primary things that I want to start with is we're going to backtrack just a little bit. I want to do a little bit of a recap because we almost made it through the whole first chapter. My goal is to complete this one and then get through as much as of chapter 2 with you as possible. Primarily, it'll be up to my voice how far we go. But I'm going to start with this. So as we get going with this, I'm going to do a little bit if you want to take some notes. But here's a very short recap of our galactic history and what we're also in the foreword of this book going to be reading into. So this again is our story of our tri-matrix 15-dimensional universal system. So when we look at the book, the Voyagers, the Galactic information, these types of ascension mechanics, what we're looking at is the ascension mechanics for our 15-dimensional time matrix or tri-matrix, tri-wave, tri-founder flame. So the story of our tri-matrix started 950 billion years ago. Now, after it started, it existed for quite a long time, billions and billions, hundreds of billions of years just fine. Then at a particular time, there was a Melchisedek or a, we will call it a black hole system, if you will. She also refers to it, and when I say she, is Ashiana Dean in the Voyagers and some of her material. She refers to it also as the Borga system. So I've written it down like this. But one of the primary things that happened is there was some distortions that were happening within another parallel system, within another system. And as this was happening, one of the ways that they decided to correct the wisdom or correct what was out of place within there is they decided to create something called the victim victimizer program. I think we all know it really well here on Earth because it has taken over like a viral infection throughout our universe. So the victim victimizer program was something that they devised in order for them to incarnate and play out both sides of the polarity so that they could correct it. But instead, it completely began to collapse the system. When this happened, it was probably about 600 billion years into this. It's about 550 billion years into it. This infestation, if you will, of this victim victimizer program then began to infect this living system, our tri-founder matrix here. And this is one of the key things that started the Lyran Wars. The Lyran Wars, it started about 300 billion years ago. So many of you have memories of the Lyran Wars. These again happened about 300 billion years ago. Now, as the Lyran Wars were going on, one of the things that was happening is founders were coming from other systems to come in to see what the distortions were. Was there a way to assist these things? So we have different beings, which were creator beings, basically gestalt beings that would come in. And one of these was the Metatron family. This was a collective that came in to assist, but they got over ambitious to how to participate and help within the system and kind of jumped too deep in and got pulled gravitationally in really deeply into the victim victimizer programming infestation. The blame, the shame, the guilt, all of these types of things began to utilize some of their higher mechanics to even create reversal cube systems or these systems that were starting to box in. So within there, 150 billion years into this evolutionary creation of this 15-dimensional time matrix, it was the fall of Metatron. Now, about, I'm not super good at doing reverse math here, but we're going to see this. This is about, 20 billion years later, actually maybe 13 billion years later was the fall of another race line of beings. We don't hear about them very much, but they are the Aquari family or of consciousness. Then about 7 billion years after that, another thing happened that was really, really important. And this was the creation of the white dragon. So I wanted to bring this in so that we could start to understand some of the dragon lineages and the dragon families, because we are going to be talking about the canarians today. And they are a dragon family and a dragon lineage that really represents what I feel a lot of people who resonate to the dragons, the dragon lines, and the dragon families are going to get to feel a little bit more of that historical timeline and a lot of the fall or the pain or even the manipulations that have happened. But the dragon lineage lines were created by the creator realms as basically guardians, protectors. They are consciousness families, consciousness lineage lines. So 130 billion years ago was the creation of the white dragon. And then as we look at this, about 129 billion years after that, so 1 billion years ago was the creation of the blue dragons or the Aquafari. So we're going to touch into this just a little bit today, but just a deep connection for those of you that are connected to the blue dragons. Now we're going to be moving into the million years. So about a half a billion years after that, so 550 million years, we're going to start to now dive into what we were reading in our last reading together. This is going to be 550 million years ago was the Taran-Syrian Wars. This was going to be the start of the Amenti rescue mission. Okay, so what we were reading in our last reading together. So now that we are looking at 550 million years ago was the Taran-Syrian Wars, where the explosions were going to be happening on Tara. The Amenti rescue mission plan started. And then we know that at 250 million years, all the way to 25 million years. So think about this. This is a 225 million year segment of time was the seeding of these Terranusium projects. So the angelic human race lines that were originally seeded within the Taran system, harmonic universe 2. This is a 225 million year process as far as what was going on. And we're going to be diving kind of at the tail end of this into the 25 million year as we get started today, because that's where we're at. But one of the things to understand about this, and we're going to get to really see, I want to emphasize that for the first 225 million years, those seedings were taking place on something referred to as parallel Earth or antiparticle Earth. And it wasn't until 25 million years ago that the first angelic race lines were starting to get seeded onto Earth, which is really, really kind of amazing for us to get to see, because that's where we're really going to start to have that tangible understanding of some of these galactic wars that were going on. Now, in this 250 million year process, I do want to take a little bit of a sidetrack over on the left-hand side over here. We're going to see that at 75 million years ago, there was something interesting that happened. And that is that through the parallel Earth system, there was some of the Lyran race lines that started to mix with some of the Borga. And when they started to mix with them, they became known as the Thetans. Now, these Thetans basically wanted to overpower and dominate. There was a deep desire to take the energy from the parallel Earth and then basically invade into this planetary Earth that we are on right now and overtake it, to basically take the power of it, become the rulers of it, so on and so forth. Now, within there, the first strand of Aurora, there is something very special. This is understanding how powerful the Aquiline sun energy is. Our Aurora Mother Earth is the Aurora Mother template. The Aquiline races are. And when we get to look at this, we're going to see that there was an attempt at this time for there to be a race line of beings of these Aquari or these Aquafarian beings to incarnate in at this time to be of assistance. These are very much multidimensional, high vibrational beings, angelic Christos that were going to be part of this rescue mission, but they didn't make it in the first wave or the first seeding. There was a lot of disruption that took place that literally they were destroyed before they could even get seeded or get going on this planet. But one of the things that was happening is that at 75 million years ago, there was an ability to work through one of these tears that was created through this Borga system. And what happened was this ray of light was able to come through from the aquiline sun energy. And it was just one strand of this light. But that one strand of light that made it through was so powerful that it literally kicked out these thetan energies from what they were doing and their influence. And as we get to understand this, this is a time when the Eartha Aquafarian races were then fully given permission by the Crystal River Councils to really directly intervene and help to open more core gates upon the planet in order to allow more and more and more of this aquiline sun energy to come through. This is really the aquiline sun is an energetic vibration or solar frequency that comes from basically the Aurora Earth template. So this is even beyond our 15-dimensional time matrix, and it would be how we would attune to some of the higher time matrices. So within this, one of the important things to understand is that these Earthas or Aquafarians, that when they were given the permission to assist, they don't come and just start fighting and doing. In fact, it's a very interesting process to where they are utilizing the permissions of the physics of the reality to play out. But the work is all in the focus in increasing the light bands. And here's what's so important about this, and for us to understand the work that we are doing, why it is so important for us to maintain the highest vibrations in everything that we are doing, is that the more that we attune to our Rashale body, the more we attune to our Christic body, our divine light blueprint, the more that we attune to this aquiline vibration, when that energy emanates out, when it is anchored into the earth, these reversal beings, these beings that have been trying to take over our planetary system, our living Christic eternal life system, they are from parallel systems. Okay, or antimatter systems, if you will. The physics there are completely different. And so when we reverberate the light that we are, it fries their system and they cannot survive in this environment. And so that's one of the main ways that these Aquafarian races work is not by all-out battle, but it is by this process of increasing the light. And the more we increase the photonic lights or these rays of energy of the light we emanate, the more we make this environment uncomfortable and it begins to fry out these thetans, these Borgas, these other beings who are operating on completely different physics, and then they begin to either fry out or just leave by choice. So that's something really important that I wanted to bring through. Just kind of moving through really quickly, we're going to be starting with the 25 million years ago seeded, how the angelic human race line was seeded here on Earth. And then we're going to see that 5.5 million years ago was when the first seeding on Earth got destroyed in the electric wars. We're going to make it through pretty much most of that today. But then we're going to see that 3.7 million years ago. So you can see there for about 20 million years, the seeded race on Earth was doing just fine. But towards the last 5 million years of it, a war outbroke, and this was a really long war that basically destroyed this race line. It destroyed the first seeding on Earth. So then we can see that it took a couple million years before a reseeding took place again, and 3.7 million years ago, the seeding 2 started all over again. And then history does repeat itself, doesn't it? we're going to see that just under 1 million years ago, so seeding 2 lasted basically almost 4 million years that seeding 2 was thriving upon the earth. But then it too was destroyed in something referred to as the 1,000-year war. So as we get to look at this, it's during the second seeding from about 3.7 million years ago. There was that attempt from Eartha for the Aquari seed race to seed here, but they were destroyed in the attempt. And then we're going to see that about 100,000 years later, sorry, I apologize, the math is a little off. But yeah, about 100,000 years later, 798,000 BC was then seeding 3. So this is going to start to show us where we are in time in history now. So as we look at the seeding number 3, this is going to include the Rama and the Temple Wars. So this is going to start to include a lot of the stories that we might start to think or know from some of the histories or the mythologies upon the earth. From there, we're going to see that about 246,000 BC, the Emerald Covenant Treaty was brought back to Earth. Angelic humans were starting to really seed upon the earth. They were definitely a different race line of beings. But then all of a sudden, this is also going to be the times when the Thoth and Enki bioregenesis started. What this is, and we'll get into this in future chapters, we're going to see that this is going to be the time of a lot of the tinkering of the genetics of these race lines. Then we're going to see that about 50 or 40,000 years later was the Draconian invasion. This was a time when there was a major calamity that started to take place because the Dracos and the Drake evasions, the sea cars, and however you want to refer to them, they are completely different than the dragons. And the Drake invasion was really a massive calamity for the Brennau dragon races. So this is going to be a major timeline when we get to it to look at. And then just to give you a timeline, 50,000 years ago BC was the Lemurian Holocaust. And then 28,000 years ago BC, the Atlantean Holocaust. So just to give you a perspective, when we start to see the Atlantean and the Lemurian Holocaust, it wasn't very long ago, especially when we're looking at millions and even billions of years ago in this massive project that has been going on, not only for Earth in the dimension that we are, but also for parallel Earth, for interdimensional realities, for the dimensional progression of race lines through these dimensional spheres. So let's go ahead and keep going with the story. I know that was a little bit, but I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a timeline to start to look at so that you can come back to that and be curious as the rest of the information starts to come through. So just saying so much love to everybody here again as we get started. Hi, Darlene. So happy that you're here, sweetheart. So much love, big hugs. And let's get started. So we're going to start where we left off, and we are now at the time of preparation for the seeding on Earth. This is the root races, cloistered races, forming of the 5 physical root races and their cloisters. Blueprint for evolution through DNA assembly, rescue mission stage 4, 25 million years ago. After the staff of Amenti was set within the sphere of Amenti at Earth's D2 core, the forming of the 5 remaining root races began. The 5 cloistered races within the morphogenetic field of the sphere polarized, splitting their energy fields, each creating 2 smaller morphogenetic fields within the sphere of Amenti. The 10 new spheres collectively held the blueprint for DNA strands 1 through 12. Each of the 5 cloistered races was responsible for the evolution of 1 pair of these new morphogenetic fields. Each sphere became the morphogenetic field for root race plus its companion cloister race that would simultaneously manifest into physical expression on Earth during the time periods that corresponded to the dimensional DNA strand to which each race was appointed. These 5 morphogenetic fields became root races 3 through 7, through which DNA strands 2 through 6 would be assembled. Each root race was responsible for assembling one strand of DNA, while its companion cloister race would hold the imprint of that strand plus strands 7 through 12. The cloister race would appear first, and through its root race would emerge. The cloistered race broke down into 5 cloistered subraces, and each subrace further broke down into 5 cloistered families. The root race would then break down into 7 subraces, and each of the 7 subraces would further break down into 7 families. Soul fragments from the dimension that corresponded to the DNA strand of the root race would be pulled from the unified field of that dimension into the body form, progressively pulling the frequency bands of that dimension into the DNA until all the frequencies of that dimension were assembled into the morphogenetic field of the body. This process was to be accomplished within 24 incarnations, or 212 cycles that were lived in one body, with the morphogenetic field in the sphere of Amenti holding the pattern for the body form. Souls trapped within that dimension could begin merging their consciousness within the new body form, and through 24 cycles of incarnation, pull their consciousness into a pattern that vibrated high enough to merge with the sphere of Amenti. I know it's a little bit complicated to read some of this, but one of the things to understand that this is going to be a lot like the very ascension we go through in our consciousness sometimes realizing how we as our consciousness, who we were as a child, didn't have the ability to integrate a lot of the wisdom that you're aware of now. And so part of what you have been doing through your own evolutionary evolvement within this very lifetime has been gathering your consciousness pieces. And the higher and higher you evolve your consciousness, the more you are merging your consciousness to that of the consciousness of your higher bodies. That's one way we can start to understand this, because when we start to look at this multidimensional stuff, it can get really, really complicated. So the best is just to start to realize they were doing this within one incarnation, but being able to start to tune into all of these different layers of the family simultaneously through the progression of this incarnation. Soul fragments would incarnate once, then transmute through each of the 7 families of its subrace, then through each of the 5 cloistered families of its cloistered subrace, building up the lower frequency patterns, base tones of that dimension into the DNA through its first 12 transmutations within the families. Next, the now more evolved soul would transmute into each of the 7 subraces of its root race, then into each of the 5 cloistered subraces of its cloistered race, building up the higher frequency patterns, overtones of that dimension into the DNA. In the final transmutation, and in all of the frequency patterns for that dimension were then pulled into the DNA, and the completed strand was assembled. The incarnate then carried the full base tone pattern of its root race and the particle overtones of its cloister race within the DNA. In this final phase, the incarnate's body, DNA, and consciousness would transmute the base tones and overtones within the DNA strand, merging to create a resonant tone through the identity so that it could merge with the cloister race morphogenetic field within the sphere of Amenti, where it would pick up the remaining activation DNA codes or overtones from the cloister. The cloister race held the higher frequency DNA codes, overtones for that dimension, which matched the base tone frequency patterns of the body double in the parallel Earth. These are called the activation codes, as they allow the DNA particles to merge with their antiparticles, creating transmutation of the matter particles and antiparticles. through the DNA strands 7 through 12 so that they could plug into the operating genetic code. The root race held the lower frequency base tones in the earth. Once both sets of DNA codes were assembled in the DNA through the 24 transmutations, the overtone activation codes from the cloister would allow the incarnate to enter its cloister morphogenetic field within the sphere of Amenti, where DNA strands 7 through 12 would plug into the activation codes. This would open the morphogenetic field of the Paladorian collective, or the 5 cloistered races, where the codes of the other root races could be assembled and the full 12 DNA strand pattern could be restored. As this process of DNA activation took place, the incarnate was enabled to then enter the blue flame morphogenetic field of Tara with its consciousness, which began activation of DNA strands 7 through 12 within the body. This process increased the rate of pulsation of the matter particles of the body into harmonic universe 2 patterns, which allowed the incarnate to turn its body into light, pass through the halls of Amenti as pure energy, then remanifest within a less dense version of that body upon Tara. The 24 transmutations were lived in one body, which progressively transmuted as the DNA assembled until later genetic distortions. Originally, the human body was designed to transmute and ascend, not die and reincarnate. The 24 cycles of transmutation later became 24 cycles of incarnation, or birth and death, through which the DNA would assemble as the consciousness passed from one life to another. But the original human body was immortal. So what this really is this is a way for us to begin to see that the transmutation process is really an evolution of our consciousness. It is the acceleration of increasing the spin or the rate within our light particles. The light pulsation begins to then spin the matter particles of the body and then begins to turn it into light body. When we start to reach certain Merkaba bodies or speeds of spinning within our matter, we then have the ability to pass through particular stargates. Each stargate we pass through then gives us the key codes for passing through it. So when that happens, it's as though now the consciousness passes through, but it's conscious transmutation. It's not even conscious death. That's what we're trying to attain now, is just to have conscious death at time of transition out of the body. This was transmutation. This was the full rainbow body of the matter form and transmutation of the matter and allowing it to pass through, where it would then step into its next higher body within the higher dimension or the higher universe where it was. So this is a really neat way for us to start to see that reincarnation wasn't the original plan upon this planet. In fact, it wasn't something that really came into play until later, but it was something that was still, there were still initiations and possibilities for even still learning how to work with it, because our true divine purpose is transmutation. So just kind of tapping into that for a moment. Just taking a pause here. Beautiful. Hello, Beth. So happy that you're here. Lavender Sky Panther, thank you for being here. Kimberly, Goddess Essence Energy. So grateful to share this with you guys. Whew, we're diving into a deep one today. So I'm just going to move through the rest of this chapter a little bit quickly, because it is just a lot about the mechanics of what our DNA transmutation was going through. So the first seeding the third world. So this was 25 million years ago to 5.5 million years ago. So as we get to look at this, we're going to remember that this was a key time where now all of these cloistered races that were being incarnated onto Earth originally from 250 million years ago, these beings were actually being incarnated in the parallel Earth. So we're going to start to tap into what that is. And I will tell you, it is still a bit of a tricky one for my brain to wrap around sometimes, this whole perspective of parallel Earth holding our other half of our codes. And parallel Earth has gone through so much pain and distortion, just like we have. So we are really healing both sides of the coin, so to speak. And then it wasn't until 25 million years ago that we're going to see that then the seeded races were now starting to incarnate into this physical reality where we are. So let's dive into that. The pattern for the evolution of the 5 remaining root races was set in motion 25 million years ago. In the first wave of souls moving out of the paladorian morphogenetic field and into physical incarnation. The 5 cloistered races were entered into Earth in various geographical locations on the Earth. Through budding, fission, and replication, the 5 cloistered races each manifested 6 male and 6 female beings on Earth, and the same number on the parallel antiparticle Earth. So in the first wave of physical creation on Earth, 60 human beings were manifested in adult form out of the cloistered race morphogenetic field. Each of the 5 cloistered races began with a family of 12 humans, 6 male, 6 female. They entered Earth together with equal standing, seeding the brown Uritarian, red Branawa, the white Hebrew, the yellow Melchisedek, and the black Uniseti. The Earth populations built up through these lineages. After about 10 million years of evolution, the third root race was entered through peoples of the Ur-Antarian cloister. The third root race was first a physical root race to appear on Earth, and they were the Lumerians. They were a brown race that appeared about 15 million years ago, who were assigned to assembling the second strand of DNA. Following the Lumerians and their 7 subraces and 49 families was the second infusion of the Branawa cloistered race and their 5 subraces and 25 families. They entered through the peoples of their first incarnational wave about 12 million years ago. Entering through the peoples of the Branoa cloister came the 4th root race, which are the Elanians and their subraces and families. The Elanians appeared about 9 million years ago, a red-skinned race who was responsible for assembling DNA strand number 3. The cloistered races and the Lumerian and Elanian root races evolved together on Earth between 25 million to 5.5 million years ago, developing high culture and much diversification. Incarnates who kept the integrity of their genetic code transmuted through each of the races and then ascended within their immortal bodies through the halls of Amenti. This period in time was known as the first seeding, and it represents the third world when referred to in Native American tradition. Now let's dive into the Electric Wars. The Electric Wars and Paladorian Resistance Entity Wars. During the course of the first seeding, all went well, as many soul fragments from Harmonic Universe 1 Earth successfully ascended through the halls of Amenti, back into Tara. But many members of the races from the first seeding had also begun to digress through animal interbreeding and contact with Harmonic Universe 1 extraterrestrials, some losing the ability of genetic transmutation and thus their immortality. About 5.5 million years ago, members of the Syrian Anunnaki race from Harmonic Universe 2, along with several other ET groups and metaterrestrials from the higher Harmonic Universe, wanted to stop the evolution of earthly races and abandon the Terranusium to the tribes, Terranusium 2 and the 12 tribes experiment. They had a fear that the mutating genetic codes of the 12 tribes would contaminate the races of Tara as they ascended through the halls of Amenti. This is actually really, really key. This is one of the key reasons there has been such an attack on the angelic human race lines, was specifically because of this fear that through our ascension through the stargates, that if we didn't fully and completely heal all mutations in our genetics, that we could actually contaminate the higher dimensional realities. Many harmonic universe 2 species did not want the digressive human element to return to Tara, for they were already creating damage within the energetic systems of Earth, and those of Tara needed protection from such activities. Numerous other groups simply wanted Earth territories for their own purposes. The resistance groups began a war with the Elohim from Harmonic Universe 3 and those of the Covenant of Palador in Harmonic Universe 2. Entities of the higher universes descended upon the earth, and a great battle of pure energy was fought on Earth's local galaxy and within Earth's atmosphere. I want to just take one pause. I won't do this too much. This is important for us to understand because right in here, it's saying so much. It's saying right in here that there was a resistance group coming from the Syrian Anunnakis. They were already starting to make complaints. They basically wanted the Terranusium project destroyed. And one of the things that they were saying was, oh, well, they're genetically digressive. If they get through the Stargates, they're going to contaminate through the Stargate. They're going to contaminate Tara. But we're also going to see that these intergalactic beings, part of their agenda for saying this was also that numerous groups simply wanted Earth territories for their own purposes. So these resistance groups started to create this ultimate battle against the angelic human race lines. And these battles were of massive, these were the battles of the gods. These are the battles of lightning and planetary explosions. This would be, in many ways, starting to see battles like we would think of the battle of Tiamat and the battles against Tiamat within the Gnostic teachings. So let me just read this and get right back into it. Entities of the higher universes descended upon Earth, and great battles of pure energy were fought in Earth's local galaxy and within Earth's atmosphere. These events became known as the Electric Wars, the wars that lasted around 900 years, as entities of these opposing groups battled for control over Earth's natural portal system and the sphere of Amenti. The human races were just caught in the middle of this battle, and the ones that were caught in this battle either ascended to Tara through the halls of Amenti or were relocated to other Harmonic Universe 1 planets with the help of the Elohim and the Harmonic Universe 2 Paladorians. Those who lost their immortal genetic codes and did not leave Earth, they perished, along with many other animal life forms, as Earth's planetary environment was just thrown into massive chaos. Earth would have been destroyed if the brain now from Harmonic Universe 5 had not intervened. So this is going to be a key time when there's going to be a lot of seeding. So it's saying again, there was a relocation that happened again. And there are ones that were at a level where they were able to ascend through the halls of Amenti and get out of danger. They were able to get away from the electric wars. But there was a lot of them that weren't able to. So there was Elohim that were able to help them relocate to other planets within this system, within the Harmonic Universe 1 planets. So Harmonic Universe 1 planets are going to be other planetary systems that are operating at dimensions 1, 2, and 3. So humanity would have been moved out in that way. But then it was saying we're going to get to see that this is actually key and detrimental. Those who lost their immortal genetic codes, they didn't leave Earth. They actually perished along with all these other animal life forms. And they basically got pulled into the planetary consciousness field. So within this, they're saying that these wars were so traumatic, and we know this because Melchisedek was exploded. We know this because the atmosphere of Mars was completely destroyed. We know this because we can see the evidence of this destruction that has happened within our solar system. But what is also saying is that Earth was in peril, that had the Brennau not intervened, Earth would have also been completely destroyed. The seal of Amenti and the end of the electric wars, so 5.5 million years ago. The Brennau entities negotiated a treaty between these opposing factions. In the agreement, the root races of Earth would be allowed to evolve, but the halls of Amenti, which are the portals between Earth and Tara, would have to be sealed to humans until the mutations within the genetic code of the root races 3 and 4, which had contaminated the morphogenetic fields, until they could be reversed. In terms of souls evolving out of Harmonic Universe 1, the sealing of the halls of Amenti meant that they could evolve into the morphogenetic field of their cloister race and pick up the strands 7 through 12, but they could not pass through the cloister morphogenetic field of their root race into the collective paladorian morphogenetic field where DNA strands of the other root races 4 through 6 could be assembled. Without the missing imprint, so it's kind of like a chunk in the middle was missing. Without the imprint frequency patterns of 4 through 6, the incarnate soul could not plug strands 7 through 12 into the operational genetic codes that they were at. The halls of Amenti were sealed to the human lineage by removing from the morphogenetic fields of the 3rd and 4th cloisters races. They removed the activation codes and overtones that would allow the particles and antiparticles of the body to merge, transmute, and assemble strands 7 through 12 into the operational DNA. This morphogenetic alteration effectively sealed the particles of the physical body out of the etheric body, antiparticle body, making the final transmutation of cloister overtone codes 7 through 12 impossible. This manifested as an energetic block between the physical and our etheric body within the human bioenergetic auric field, and a sealing out of the primary D1 overtones within the base chakra of the human, an auric configuration still carried today within the contemporary human. In a simpler language, this is telling us this is exactly what's missing in our codes that makes us feel disconnected from our higher self, from sensing the energies, from sensing these connections, because we're having to come in and rebuild the missing piece of the bridge, so to speak, that we are recreating the rainbow bridge. And that when we recreate those codes within us, then we can then start to connect to their matching pair in parallel Earth. And when we can bring them together, we reactivate those codes within us. And so we start to create our full operating channel, again, our full strands 1 through 12 activation all the way through. But the missing codes are the ones that make us feel so frustrated. Like, I feel so blocked. I feel like I can't connect to my higher self. I feel like I'm so frustrated. I feel like I can't feel things like other people or things like this. This is going to be why. And it's also going to be showing us how we overcome these very energies that we have been so frustrated with as a human species for so long. So as we go on with this, we're going to see it's going to continue. It also created perception of duality between consciousness and body for those bearing this genetic configuration. Normally, an incarnate would build up the DNA strand of its root race, then build up the activation strands from its cloister race, which would allow it to pull strands 7 through 12 into manifestation from the cloister morphogenetic field. The 7th strand, which is a primary base tone strand, which contained the frequencies of all of the strands below it, would plug into the single strand assembling through the cloister, then assemble all of the other race strands as their frequency patterns were contained within the 7th strand. Once strands 1 through 7 were assembled, an interdimensional resonant tone, which are 3 resonant tones, was created. A body could then turn into light, pass through the blue flame in the sphere of Amenti, and re-manifest on Tara, where the assembly of strands 8 through 12 would continue. By removing one of the activation codes or overtone frequency patterns from the morphogenetic field of the cloister, the human incarnate could not plug into the 7th DNA strand, which meant that the incarnate could not assemble the strands of the other root races. So it could transmute into light and pass through the blue flame. Humans carrying this code distortion became trapped in their matter bodies within harmonic universe 1, and the supply of transmuting energy available to the matter body became finite, as the DNA strands that would have fed the body within the higher frequency energies were no longer operational. When the body reached its genetic capacity for assembling frequencies, then the physical structure would begin to deteriorate as the consciousness was transferred back into the morphogenetic field. The morphogenetic field and the fields of the cloister races are going to be cloistered race consciousnesses, but these cloistered race consciousnesses are also within the planetary consciousness field of the Earth. So what it's saying is that our consciousness was able to ascend only so far, but when it tipped out and there was no more roots that could reach to higher light codes, they began to just cap out. And from there, the energy becomes finite. We have no eternal light to tap into. And if our body doesn't attune to the eternal light, it becomes finite, it dies. So what it's saying is that the moment that we would reach that cap in there, immediately the digression or the physical death would start to happen of the body, and then the body or the light would just return back into the morphogenetic field of the cloister family, or the soul field, if you will, planetary consciousness of the Earth, and try again and try again. That's what a lot of our reincarnation has been, right? So following this morphogenetic distortion, the consciousness would birth into its root race, complete the 12 family and the 12 subrace transmutation cycles, then run into the genetic frequency block. The body would then die, and the incarnate would pass into the morphogenetic field for its cloister, then have to rebirth into a body within the next root race. After completing the transmutation cycles of the 4th root race, the incarnate would pass into its cloister morphogenetic field and then have to wait until the 5th root race manifestation cycle had begun before it could complete its final incarnation in the Aryan root race and release the seal of Amenti. So we are in the Aryan root race time right now, which is actually the 5th root race, which is working on the 4th DNA strand. And those that are indigos came in with the 6th DNA strand available, not necessarily activated, but available. So just to kind of get that understanding in there. So within this, once assembling the 4th DNA strand through the 5th root race, incarnation and the seal of Amenti could then release from DNA strand 1 and the activation codes or overtones from the 5th cloister, then they would plug in, assemble the 5th, 6th, and 7th strands, creating an interdimensional resonant tone. Then the body could again turn into light, pass through the blue flame, and remanifest on Tara to continue evolution. So the seal of Amenti made it necessary to incarnate 3 times, once within root race 3, then within root race 4, then within root race 5, in order to complete the dimensional ascension process into harmonic universe 2. After the sealing of the halls of Amenti, the sphere of Amenti at Earth's core became the collector of souls, awaiting rebirth into the 5th root race, through which the seal of Amenti could be lifted, so they could ascend and be set free. Following the electric wars, the 3rd and 4th root races would have to be reseeded on Earth, and the new seeding would carry on with it the seal of Amenti. The halls of Amenti were not in themselves sealed or closed. They were only sealed to incarnates carrying the altered genetic strain. Some extraterrestrial hybrid strains of the humans in exile in other planetary systems who did not have the seal of Amenti genetic distortion returned to Earth following the electric wars to pass through the halls of Amenti. It was then discovered that a much greater problem had occurred as the result of the electrical wars. So as we're getting to see this, we're getting to really start to see there's already a huge play on where is our genetics, what is the purpose of us constantly reincarnating back into this earth and really gathering our pieces in order to be able to move through this hall of Amenti. And it's saying that a lot of the hybrid extraterrestrial beings, many of the ones that were either in exile, that had been moved to other places, they were actually not under the distortion from these electric wars. So they were able to go right on through. They weren't distorted from before then through hybridization with other extraterrestrials, interbreeding with animals, or these kinds of things. So their genetics were not distorted, and they were easily able to come re-merge with the morphogenetic field here, and then pass through the Hall of Amenti and make it to Harmonic Universe 2. But we're going to see these electric wars were so massive that it caused massive pole tilt. This is going to be the start of the Ice Age energy within there. This is the flood. This was massive catastrophes that took place for our planet Earth. The seal of Palador, pole tilt, quick freeze, sphere of Amenti, placed in dimension or density 4, first major Earth flood, 5.5 million years old, wall in time. Summary. As a result of damage from the electric wars, the Elohim had to place the sphere of Amenti in D4, creating a fourth dimensional frequency block within the second and third DNA strands, sealing root races 3 and 4 out of their morphogenetic field soul matrices, creating buildup of soul fragments in D2, D3, and D4 that would have to integrate into root race 5 and their consciousness. What they're saying right there is that literally this damage created a cap. So all these beings, all these souls got trapped or stuck here. And it started to back up in these dimensions, dimensions 2, 3, and 4. So the dimensions in the elemental, the animal kingdom, in the earth realm, dimensions 3 in the human realm, if you will, and dimensions 4 in the astral realm or the spirit realm began to just back up. It started to get really full because nobody could start to leave. And all of these souls are like in waiting at a bus station. They're like, I want to get out of here. I want to go home. Well, the next root race coming in was the Aryan race. Root race 5 was the next race line coming in. And that meant that they were the only way out. These souls needed to get in and incarnate into that root race line to get out. And it put a tremendous amount of strain on this root race because it meant they literally had to not only do their own evolution, but do the healing work for all of their ancestors. Does that sound familiar to you guys? Because we are the 5th root race. So this is where we're doing a lot of the family constellations work, healing the family tree, healing a lot of the family karma and debt, because it literally, you're going to see, she's going to explain it beautifully in here and how it plays out through our consciousness. So this created the subconscious mind D2 emotional body, which could draw in elemental Lemurian root race 3 soul fragments, a D3 egotistical mind that would draw in the Atlantean root race 4 soul fragments, and the D4 astral mind body that would draw the soul fragments of root race 3 and 4 from the astral plane. Manifested as an extra D4 frequency pattern within the second and third DNA strands, a blockage within the second and third chakras through which their energy bodies could only merge through the fourth chakra, and as an energetic barrier between the frequencies of the second, third, and fourth dimensions within the bioenergetic auric field. This created separation between the emotional, mental, and astral identity aspects. That's a huge way of saying that one of the solutions to be able to help this is that the body had to start to become more and more separate from each other. So our astral body, our mental body, our emotional body, our etheric body all had to start to kind of create its own layers and bodies in order to have buffer zones and chakra centers to process all of this healing work, so that it had bands within to work within. So we became even more fractured or separated from ourself is really another way of looking at that. Root race 5 souls became responsible for integrating the soul fragments of the Lemnians and the Atlanteans of the second seeding and the Atlanteans and the Lemurians of the third seeding, which manifested as blockages within the second emotional body, the third mental body, and the fourth astral body chakras and corresponding levels of the auric field. Seal released through assembly of the fourth DNA strand and integration of the soul fragments, which must occur before Seal of Amenti can release from DNA strand 1. Human consciousness lost awareness of its relationship to Earth and the higher dimensions, and its species' evolutionary memory, and the souls of the root races and cloisters from the third and fourth races could only evolve through the fifth root race now. Auric configuration remains in present-day human descendants of root races 3 and 4 and within Aryan root race 5. The present Aryan root race is now responsible for integrating the soul fragments of their Lemanian, Lumerian, and Entrian and Brennau cloister ancestors from the second and third seeding. The Aryan root race is also responsible for integrating the antiparticle overtones omitted by the Seal of Amenti, which appears as a buildup of electrical particles within the etheric body called miasms, which distort the natural functioning of the chakra system and accelerate the manifestation of physical dis-ease. The seal of palador must be released before the seal of Amenti can release, both achieved by assembling the full fourth DNA strand. I'm just going to say one of my favorite statements, which is let love do all the work. When we really do start to talk about 4D, the astral plane, we're also corresponding that to the heart chakra, which there is a seal there that we have to remove. This is, you know, the seals, removing the seals from our chakras, from our bodies, from our energy systems is what is reconnecting us, but we have to do the actual work to do it. And part of this is doing the heart healing, finding a way to allow the vibrational energy to move through there so that we can get that full DNA strand fully activated. And this is really a massive thing that's happening on planet Earth right now. For a period of time following the end of the electric wars, Earth could not sustain life. For over 4,000 years, Earth was plagued by erratic weather patterns, tectonic shifting, and climate anomalies. Earth experienced a slow partial pole reversal and tilted several degrees on its axis between 5.5 million years ago, and there's 5,508,100 and 5,500,000 and 504,000 years ago. I'll let you do the math. As a result of the damage done to Earth's energetic grid and portal systems during the electric wars, numerous ET or extraterrestrial races visited the planet during its more stable periods. Okay, so this is super key. I want you guys to pay attention to this. Just picture this. At this time, Earth is just chaotic. At this time, most of the life is gone on it. There has been so much damage done to Earth, her energetic grid, and now it's basically just spinning in space in this damaged form. Now you got all of these other extraterrestrial races starting to visit, starting to become curious, starting to even visit it a little bit more, even during its stable periods. Some were serving as guardians over the sphere of Amenti, but various animal forms were again reseeded by visiting races. Approximately 5.5 million, 4,000 years ago, a sudden final shift in Earth's grid and its poles realigned. There was a quick freeze, and this ice age occurred, which wiped out most of the life forms on the planet, except for some of those residing in the deep caverns beneath the seas. Following the shift, the vibrational rate of Earth's grid dropped swiftly, and it could no longer hold the frequencies of the sphere of Amenti at its core. If the sphere of Amenti was not removed, the Earth would explode. In order to avoid planetary destruction, the Elohim of Harmonic Universe 3 and the Ra Confederacy entity families, they came and they detached the sphere of Amenti's morphogenetic field from Earth's core in D2. And they did this 5.5 million years ago. It was then placed in a secure position in deep space within the fourth dimensional frequency bands. Because the sphere was placed within the D4 frequency bands, it acquired a fourth dimensional frequency seal, which meant that souls who had not yet assembled their fourth strand of DNA could no longer merge with their root race morphogenetic field or soul matrix, or that of their cloister. The root races 3 and 4 and their cloistered races who were to be reseeded on Earth with the seal of Amenti in their genetic code could not evolve to assemble the fourth strand, as this strand was assembled through birthing through the fifth root race. This fourth dimensional seal in the sphere of Amenti became known as the seal of palador. It is as it sealed the races out of their paladorian morphogenetic field once they had entered manifestation. The root race 3, Lemanian and Lumerian, and the root race 4, Atlantean and Atlantean souls of the second and third seeding could not reincarnate into the fifth Aryan root race and become trapped in time within the second, third, and fourth dimensions. So it's really just starting to see how, because of all of these measures that had to be taken place, one, to not destroy or explode the planet, in order to make sure that digressed genetics weren't entering into other dimensional higher universes. All of these seals and precautions had to get put into place. But what was happening is it started to mean that the progression that was put into place, the Terranusium project, the experiment of the human angelic race, was about this process that was it was like on a timeline. It was supposed to be like, okay, like a relay race. Root race 1, you go in. Okay, good. Now you do it. Then 2 comes in and picks up the baton from there and runs. And then 3 grabs it and runs. And then 4 grabs it and runs. And the whole point was that each root race was going to do the next leg of the trip to rebuild all of our genetic codes to get back out, like building the rope to get back out. But this whole electric war happened in the middle. This whole catastrophe just came in and just catastrophized it, which means that the first people in the first leg of the run eventually got trapped within this dimensional sphere, and they had to sit and wait for the fifth root race to come and then hope to incarnate in and then begin the repair again through this. So I hope this helps a little bit to start to understand some of these kind of feelings of feeling stuck, feeling frustrated, feeling trapped, feeling like you shouldn't be here, in these kinds of things. It helps us start to understand where some of that is coming from. Following death, these souls would enter the D2 Earth core. This is where my heart breaks, because we're talking about really advanced race lines, Atlanteans, Lemurians, these original race lines. And what is happening is it was saying that when they died, following death, these souls would then enter the D2 Earth core, and their consciousness would fragment into the Earth's D2 unified field. Having lost their form-holding morphogenetic field, they would incarnate into elemental consciousness and evolve as second-dimensional life forms. They would be trapped in the elemental incarnations until the fourth dimensional seal of palador was lifted from the morphogenetic field. Whew. The Paladorian Amenti morphogenetic field within the sphere of Amenti represented the collective soul matrix for the human lineage on Earth. Because of the seal of Palador, the races would emerge into Earth from the morphogenetic field from D4 instead of through Earth's D2 core. They would experience one incarnation, die, and become part of the consciousness of Earth, losing their sentient identity. Meanwhile, the portion of their essence that had been picked up in the fourth dimensional base tone frequencies while passing through D4 and birthing would rise back into the lower frequency bands of D4 at death. These fragments of identity became disembodied astral consciousness without a body, form, or organizational identity imprint. It's showing us how we kept getting more fragmented and more stuck in here. It's like one part goes into the planetary consciousness and another part just gets stuck in the astral consciousness with no body. So think about ghosts, spirits, disincarnate beings. The consciousness just keeps piling up in the mental plane or the consciousness plane of the planetary Earth body. So meanwhile, the portion of their essence that had picked up the fourth dimension base tone frequencies while passing through D4 and birthing would rise back into the lower frequency bands of D4 at death. These fragments of identity became disembodied astral consciousness without a body, form, or organizational identity imprint. The fifth root race Aryans were able to retain form in the astral identity as the D4 frequencies were already contained within their fourth DNA strand. Though the Aryans could not plug the second, third, and fourth DNA strands into each other until the fourth strand had been fully assembled, the identity pattern manifested itself within the second, third, and fourth dimensions, creating an emotional elemental body in D2, a mental body in D3, and an astral body in D4. As the Aryan race progressively assembled its fourth DNA strand, unity between the D2 emotional awareness, D3 mental awareness, and D4 astral awareness could result, allowing the consciousness to separate from the physical body and travel through the D4 astral planes. Once all of the fourth strand was assembled and the ancestral soul fragments integrated, the seal of palador could release in the Aryan genetic code. The emotional, mental, and astral identities would merge. The activation codes, overtones of the fifth cloister, the Hebrew, would plug in and release the seal of Amenti, allowing ascension through the blue flame in the sphere of Amenti to occur. The third and fourth root races did not have an astral body, as their genetic imprint did not include the fourth D4 strand of DNA. Only members of race 3 and 4 who participated in interstellar breeding were able to create the organizational form of an astral body in D4 and splice in the imprint for the fourth DNA strand. Members of these earlier races from the second and third seedings could not pass into their race's morphogenetic field at death, and thus they could not reincarnate into the fifth root race. At death, their soul essence fragmented into the unified fields of dimensions 2, 3, and 4, where they would have to merge with the Aryan consciousness in order to ascend. A great burden was placed upon the Aryan root race and its cloister Hebrew, for they became responsible for assimilating the fragments of consciousness from their race 3 and 4 ancestors before they could fully ascend. These ancestral soul fragments appeared as fragments of incarnational memory and chaotic identities, subpersonality fragments from the elemental, mental, and astral planes, which would assemble into the conscious awareness as the astral, mental, and emotional bodies merge through the assembly of the fourth DNA strand. Along with this burden, the Aryans in Hebrew also had to integrate the missing sixth overtone in DNA strand 1, through which the seal of Amenti could release and ascension could take place. Until the seal of Amenti was released, the antiparticle codes that could not merge with the physical body built up within the etheric body level of the auric field, the antiparticle double within the parallel earth. This electrical buildup in the etheric body caused the physical body particles to become overly dense and manifested as blockages called miasms within the natural energy channels of the body, accelerating the manifestation of physical disease and the cellular deterioration process. The Aryan and Hebrew races and their Aryan and Hebrew descendants would inherit the burden of cellular clearing. Most humans of the present day have the 5th race coding and are subconsciously involved with this process of cellular clearing, integration of the emotional, mental, and astral bodies, and assembling the 4th DNA strand in order to release the seal of Amenti and ascend. The seal of Palador would create a buildup of chaotic energies, identity fragments, within the elemental, mental, and astral planes until the 5th root race fully fulfilled its genetic imprint and assembled the 4th DNA strand through which the soul fragments could be released. An alternative to fragmentation was offered to the races through the latter inception of what came to be called the 3rd eye of Horus. So we know that the Eye of Ra and the Eye of Horus are wisdom keepers. This is a healing energy. And so this was going to be another way or an alternative way for the fragmentation to be able to heal, to repair, for this reassembly to be able to take place. So just want to take a moment. Whew, how's everybody doing? We're getting through it. I know this is kind of heavy, kind of a lot, isn't it? So please, if you have questions as we go along through it, just type them in the chat. I love, if you're here, type in the chat just so that I can say hello to you. I'm so grateful to share this energy with you today. Let's see. So through the burdens, here we go. So now we have the inception of what came to be called the 3rd eye of Horus. So we'll definitely get into this. Through the burdens of evolution placed upon human consciousness under the seals of Amenti and Palador would be great. The Elohim and the Ra Confederacy knew this before orchestrating the 2nd seeding, and they allowed it to occur as a way of assisting to purify the digressive genetic codes. I'm going to read that. I'm going to kind of brief that one more time just so that we can understand this, because this is really showing us that our forefathers, our founder races, if you will, that the beings that we would be seeking guidance from, help from, they knew a lot of this hardship was going to happen. They knew that it wasn't going to be easy. They knew that it was going to be a massive burden, but they, from their perspective of seeing the timelines, I want to start to put the perspective out there that we really have been in a temporal war. We have really been in a timeline war. This hasn't just been some linear thing that we've been going through. We're going to see that especially when we're talking about parallel Earth, when we're talking about other dimensional universes like the Borga or the Weezedak system or these black hole systems, we're talking about literal other realities. And that through the rips in the fabric of our universal bodies, through false wormholes, through misusing mechanics and punching through, like, just a physical way to see this is a lot of times they'll actually purposefully explode a planet, or primarily usually a star or a sun, something a little bit bigger, in order to create then a black hole, which then starts to create a doorway, a rip. They mess with the time fissures in the system. And this is where we're going to see it gets super complicated, because we've got these multi-dimensional beings, these meta-terrestrials that are seeing things quantumly through multiple timelines and realities. And so within this, to kind of understand that it was worth the risk, if we want to look at it this way, to allow this burden of evolution to be placed on the human consciousness under these seals of Amenti and Palador, that it was worth it because it was one of the ways that it could help us assist to purify the digressive genetic codes, right? So there is a purpose. There is a purpose. It's not just about suffering for learning or growing about ourselves. I think it's really about us just attuning back into what we know in our heart and in our truth is our alignment. and that we start to step away from feeling the suffering as something that's victimizer is happening to us, but we remember this massive soul's purpose that we are here upon. This is so much bigger than just us. We're part of massive families, you guys. So as we get to see this, they knew before orchestrating the second seeding, and they allowed it to occur as a way of assisting to purify the digressive genetic codes. The lower vibrating genetic imprints would dissolve into the unified field of D2, while the soul's essence could re-evolve through the fifth races. They knew that one day when Earth's grid vibrated high enough, the sphere of Amenti could be returned to Earth's core, releasing the fourth dimensional seal of palador, and the souls lost in D2 and D4 could ascend. Not only did the seal of palador create problems within the incarnational process, it also created problems for the physical incarnates on Earth. The race morphogenetic field through which a race incarnates represents the living memory bank of that evolving race. If the morphogenetic field of the race is removed from the planet and its energies are no longer running through the planetary grid, the entire race's memory is wiped out of the planet's cellular memory. People alive on the planet cannot find the context or sequence of most of the race memory. They do not remember their origins, the purpose for which they came, or their destination through the course of their evolution. The portions of the race morphogenetic field removed from the planet take with them the DNA strand imprint through which that memory could be stored within the incarnate's body cellular memory. Corresponding DNA particles break loose from the operating DNA strands, and when they do, they lose their sequence of linear order and cannot translate through the neurological structure of the human into conscious perception. DNA particles breaking loose from the operating strands become what Earth scientists call junk DNA, stored within the cells with seemingly no purpose. So this is one of the key things we're doing. Not only are we elevating the energy, I want to just come right back up to the end of page 24 here when it says, when Earth's grid can vibrate at a high enough energy, the sphere of Amenti can be returned to Earth's core. And I will say there are so many beloved souls on the planet that I know sometimes we're like, what is our soul's purpose? But our soul's purpose on one level is a unity soul purpose, a collective soul purpose for us all to be that drop in the bucket that is elevating that frequency for the Earth's core in order for more of these codes to come back online. And when that happens, we know it's working because all of a sudden we start coming back online and we start getting flashes of memories. We start getting flashes of curiosity. We start getting impulses to read books like this and to understand these things that would literally not even be in our consciousness if those strands were still floating in the abyss and not activated for us. Because it says, it's really clear right here, their sequence, if we lose their sequence in our living light language, our eternal light code, it's also our flashline sequence. If we lose those strands in there, they literally cannot translate through the neurological or through the way our brain processes in order for us to have a consciousness of these things at all. We just wouldn't even think about it. After the seal of palador was set, the races of the second seeding would enter incarnation with no memory of their identity or of the higher dimensional worlds from which they had come. This knowledge would be stored within the fourth dimension and could be accessed only through the astral essence. The races would also forget their connection to the earth and to each other. Then, as this memory is stored within the second strand and is blocked from mental view, the human of the second seeding would have a new kind of consciousness, a perception of exaggerated duality, and a sense of separation from all things that would bury the memory and the truth of the teachings of the sacred law of one. Through the dismantled DNA codes stored in the cells, the human would develop a subconscious mind containing the consciousness of its second strand and soul fragments drawn in from D2 elemental unified field. A time of dream assimilation would have to take place in order to begin assembling the astral awareness of the fourth strand of the soul fragments drawn in from the D4 unified field. A new kind of multi-layer consciousness would develop in the human, quite different from the earlier unified awareness of its immortal body. Even for visitors of non-human lineage, the memories of the planet's history would not be found unless it were accessed through the sphere of Amenti in the fourth dimension. The seal of palador placed Earth in a frequency quarantine, through which it became temporarily disconnected from its intergalactic community. Humans on Earth would not be able to remember what existed on the Earth, or that Earth was a member of a vast multidimensional reality fields containing innumerable sentient forms of life. The human developed tunnel vision, a condition which remains today within the majority of people on Earth. Great hope was placed upon the success of the fifth root race's evolution. For the fifth root race was designed to assemble the fourth DNA strand, the strand that corresponds to the fourth dimension. If the fifth root race could fully evolve its strand, their astral awareness could pass through the seal of palador. While they were still alive in the body, they would consciously awaken in their astral bodies, discover the secrets of their missing codes, and begin to consciously heal the mutations in their gene codes. The fifth races would become the keepers of records for Earth until the sphere of Amenti was returned to Earth's core, as they could pull the lost race memory from the sphere of Amenti in D4 and bring it alive once again upon the planet. Following the removal of the sphere of Amenti from Earth's core 5.5 million years ago, the Earth's grid rapidly plunged in speed, then began an even more rapid acceleration as erratic energies left over from the sphere filtered through the Earth's bioenergetic system. Climatic changes again occurred. Land masses slid beneath waters and great quakes rumbled through the planet. Within 3 years of the removal of the sphere, a great flood came that covered over 85% of Earth's surface. The memory of this flood, along with that of 2 others, was given to you by the Elohim and recorded in your biblical history as one event. The flood of 5.5 million years ago just described is the first major flood on Earth. The second flood occurred around 849,000 years ago, and the third during the third seeding of the root races. There were many other periods of flooding, but these 3 periods were the most notable. With the seal of palador came a wall in time behind which the truth of human lineage was hidden. Humans born in the second and third seedings would be marked by the seals of Amenti and palador, bearing the burden of a past of which they would have no memory. It could take millions of years for the Earth grid vibrational rate to rise enough so that life with fourth dimensional coding of the fifth races could be sustained and the sphere of Amenti return, so the seal of palador could be lifted. Human evolution was stunted 5.5 million years ago and would have remained so if it were not for Sirius B. So I'm just going to take a drink really quick as we get started with the second chapter. Whew. Yeah. Oh, your dreams are all about these timelines. Yeah. You know what? This is huge. This is really huge to really give validation for those that feel cut off from memories, or maybe that feel like you don't remember your dreams. This is really important to start to recognize too. This is a massive thing that's happening for so many. These records are coming through each and every one of us. You and I are all bringing them back right now through our flashes of our galactic history, through our dreams, through our nudges, through our past life memories. So I truly, have so much gratitude for all of you that do this work. Go get past life regressions, go do QHHT sessions, do your galactic histories, dive into these things, because the more you even just get a tinge of these memories back, it comes back into our collective and it jars us all awake more and more and more. Isn't that so amazing? All right. So let's dive into this part within here. the second seeding. So this is, now we're all the way down, man. We've been so far back in history, 25 million years ago. Now we're starting to get way closer, but it's still 4 million years ago. So now we're going to start, for all of you that have such a connection to Sirius B, to the Sirius star system, and to a lot of these Atlantean times, we're going to start to dive into this. The second seeding, Sirius B, and the third eye of Horus, 4 million years ago. In an attempt to revitalize the human evolutionary program, on behalf of the Terranites who had sacrificed their freedom 550 million years ago to rescue the lost souls of Tara through the Terranusium tube experiment. About 4 million years ago, the Syrian Council of Harmonic Universe 2, working with the Elohim and descendants of the Taran Ceres, an Harmonic Universe 2 family, also known as the Ceres, and several others from the Harmonic Universe 2 groups. They all got together and created a plan through which human evolution on Earth can be restarted. Earth's grid still could not sustain life with the fourth dimensional gene code missing. So a plan was devised to allow the souls waiting within the sphere of Amenti in D4 to be re-entered into Earth by a process called downgrading. Through this process, the vibrational essence of the race morphogenetic field could be stepped down to a slower vibrational pattern by passing a portion of the morphogenetic field through the core of another planet in Harmonic Universe 1. This experiment would require the use of a planetary body within the same time spiral cycles as Earth, which had a core vibration speed and particle pulsation rate slightly higher than that of Earth. The planet chosen for this experiment is in your Sirius star system known as Sirius B. An artificial portal bridge was constructed between the core of Sirius B, the sphere of Amenti in D4, and the Earth core at D2. A small portion of the Amenti morphogenetic field was placed within the core of Sirius B, and the part that contained the energy essence of souls of the second seeding. Some of these souls' essences combine their consciousness with the evolving etheric consciousness of Sirius B and created a hybrid strain of Sirian human consciousness, which became known as the canarians. This name was derived from the Kuntares, the non-physical Sirian subrace of consciousness with which the human consciousness had merged. The canarians became semi-dense physical beings upon merging with the morphogenetic field of humans from the second seeding. Much later, the canarians founded the Canarian Federation, gaining approval from the Harmonic Universe 1 Galactic Federation to serve as a guardian and educator race for Earth humans of the second and third seedings. And they became heavily involved with the old Sumerian and Egyptian cultures, as well as that of the Atlantea and Atlantis. I'm going to pause there for a minute. I want to just give you guys something to reference. So you guys are seeing I have written on here Canarian dragons. The Canarians were also holding the sound tones of creation, Ka, Ta, Ra. So for those of you that understand some of these sound tones, you're going to see that they are part of this lineage or this family line, and they were working with the Mother Ark Stargate. Their purpose was for transmuting stuck or damaged consciousness. So that's another way of saying everything that we just read in here. But I'm going to invite all of you, if you feel guided, to go to the Ascension Glossary. So ascensionglossary.com by Lisa Renee, and just type in there Canarian dragons. She has another beautiful way for you to actually get to hear this very same story, but with just a little bit of different words to it. So when we get to read the words here of the Voyagers and the secrets of Amenti that Ashiana Dean brought through, we're going to recognize Lisa Renee has also brought through tremendous. She has a beautiful way of clarifying a lot of this. And And my hope is that in some way that I can bring a little bit of clarity to some of these words, because it is a lot, right? It is a lot to try to understand, like Cantarian, like what is this? Well, they were these non-physical beings, so they exist at non-physical is going to be existing at a higher vibrational dimensional frequency, right? And so when they're in this, this consciousness field of beings chose to merge, but they are very much connected to dragon stories, dragon lineage lines. And we're going to see how the Cantarians, really those who are connected to the Cantarians, those who have incarnated in or worked with this energy, truly deserve so much love, a medal of love. What, just for that recognition, for really a lot of the pain and the suffering, because these guys were really at a front line at a very traumatic time in our history. So let's just keep going. But again, ascensionglossary.com. So as we move within this, they became semi-dense physical beings upon merging with the morphogenetic field of humans from the second seeding. Much later, the Cantarians founded the Cantarian Federation, gaining approval from the Harmonic Universe Harmonic Universe 1 Galactic Federation to serve as guardians and educators. So these were some of the primary beings that were maintaining the Law of One teachings, the Sirius B wisdoms, in the Atlantean times. And so again, they became heavily involved with the old Sumerian and Egyptian cultures, as well as that of Alania and Atlantis. The portal bridge between Sirius B and the sphere of Amenti and Earth allowed for greater evolutionary options for the fourth and fifth races, those who carried the third DNA strand in their race morphogenetic field. This option was not available to Lemanian or Lumerian and Antrian cultures, as they did not carry the full third strand imprint in their morphogenetic field. The option assisted the Atlantean and the Atlantean races and their Brennau cloisters, who successfully assembled the third strand, and also the Aryan races and their Hebrew cloister, who were not able to fully assemble their fourth DNA strand prior to death. For these races, instead of the soul essence fragmenting into D2, D3, and D4 following death, as would be the case due to the seal of palador, the soul essence who had assembled most of the third strand could move into the race morphogenetic field in Sirius B. Within the morphogenetic field of Sirius B, the soul could evolve here for a time as disembodied consciousness to assemble more frequencies into its code, then pass into the sphere of Amenti through the portal bridge. Souls taking the Sirius B path of evolution could release the seal of palador, but not the seal of Amenti. They could return to the paladorian morphogenetic field and wait there for the seeding of the fifth race, into which they could then incarnate to assemble the remainder of the fourth strand. This was a much better option than fragmentation, which would create loss of the personal identity imprint as the soul fragments merged with the consciousness of the fifth races. Individual sentient identity could be retained through evolving through Sirius B. During the second seeding, this portal bridge became known as the Hall of Amorea. In the third seeding, during the times of Atlantis, the Egyptian pharaonic rule, it became known as the third eye of Horus and represented the culmination of the left eye of Horus and the right eye of Horus mystical teachings. The third eye of Horus was a closely guarded secret, and passage through this dimensional bridge was reserved for the few elite who carried the needed third strand genetic imprint. So again, if you look at the ascensionglossary.com under Cantarian dragons, you're going to get to hear a little bit more about Amorea, the Amorea light, the Amorea sun. And also just touching in a little bit, she'll explain a little bit also more on the third eye of Horus. The second seeding, the fourth world. 3,700,000 to 848,000 years ago. The morphogenetic field for the second seeding races was entered into Sirius B approximately 4 million years ago. The races began incarnating on Earth through a small group of human hybrids who had found exile and evolved within the Harmonic Universe 1 Pleiades star system during the Electric Wars. Through the Syrian Council of Harmonic Universe 2 and the Galactic Federation of Harmonic Universe 1, members of this hybrid race, known as the Euphorites, sometimes called the Uris, migrated from the Harmonic Universe 1 Pleiadian star system to Sirius B. They interbred with the Canarian race to strengthen the human and Syrian imprint in their genetic code, forming a smaller hybrid race called the Dagos. Through the Dagos, Canarian and Harmonic Universe 1 Pleiadian lineages became intertwined with the original Turanusium 2 imprint during the second seeding. The Dagos were a dark-skinned, brown-skinned race whose genetic imprint would be carried as a recessive gene within the human strain of the second seeding. The Dagos were brought to Earth to set up small colonies in various locations around just under 4 million years ago. Reseeding of the cloistered and root races of Amenti began, starting with the Urantarian cloister 3,700,000 years ago, followed by the root race 3 million years ago. Root race 3, the Lumerians, became the Lemanians, denoting their passage through Sirius B. The fourth root race and its cloister entered next, the Branau cloister, about 3 million years ago, followed by the Atlantean root race 4 at about 2,500,000 years ago. The Atlanteans became known as the Atlanteans. The fifth root race, Aryans, and their cloister Hebrew then entered. The Hebrew 1,500,000 years ago, and the Aryans 1,275,000 years ago. Or 1,000 years ago. This time period beginning with the second seeding 3,700,000 years ago, and extending through the third seeding into the present time, representing the fourth world of the Native American legend. So just to kind of, sometimes dates kind of get me a little bit tripped up because, you know, it's hard for us to kind of keep that in perspective sometimes. But if we look at this as a timeline, basically what was happening is this rescue plan came into place where the Sirius B system became the place where genetic lineages could begin to move through. We also have these Uris that migrated in from the Pleiadian star system. So basically, again, it was another hybridization time from our sacred galactic lineages. Another hybridization time where multiple races came together in this rescue plan mission that began to create interbreeding of their genetics in order for these genetics to then begin to incarnate in through the Sirius B star system imprint and then be able to incarnate again into the Earth so that they had more of the codes that would help them at least release the seal of palador so that they could reconnect with that again. And it's showing again that we're all connected. It's just that these root races go in cycles. And so again, what happened? Root race 1, root race 3, the Lumerians, because again, the root race 1 and 2 is the Polarians and the Hyperboreans, and those are in the parallel or anti-particle reality. So they're not incarnating in the physical reality any longer. If we remember, it was root race 3, the Lumerians were the first of the root races to incarnate into physicality. And because they were the first in line, pardon my language, but well, I'll just say it cleaner, but they took the brunt of it. They got stuck the most. These Lumerians really got hit the hardest as far as being stuck more, having less of the codes, because they were the first baton in the Raleigh race. And then the Atlanteans after that, and then the Aryans after that. So you can see that it still has to go in a sequence. And so even though this new plan came where they all started to now merge together, new hybridized race, incarnating in through the Sirius B Stargate so that they could move through that Stargate, incarnate into Earth. guess what? They still had to go through the same sequence. So even though there's a bit of time in between, you're going to see that it was the Lemanians and then the Atlanteans and then the Aryans came in again. And when the Aryans came in that final time, that is again what she is tying that into the fourth world of the Native American legend. Hope that makes a little bit of sense in there. Melchisedek races, DNA strands and the races, the sixth root race, the Melchisedeks and Hebrew cloister mix, Agartha and the Essenes, Hebrews and Christians. Ooh, we're diving into it, aren't we? The fifth root race Aryans, now known as the Aryans, were responsible for assembling the fourth DNA strand, which corresponded to the fourth dimensional frequencies, and through them the Earth grid would rise in vibrational rate, so the sphere of Amenti could be returned to the Earth's core. As they fulfilled the assembly of the fourth strand of the seal of palador, it would be lifted and allowing the soul fragments from D2 and D4 to merge with the fifth race consciousness and evolve, and the soul essences of races 3 and 4, who waited within the sphere of Amenti to reincarnate into the fifth race so that they could be set free. The Aryans contained within their DNA strands numbers 1, 2, and 3, and the base codes of 4. Their Hebrew cloister contained these plus the imprint for assembly of the strands 7 through 12. Both Aryan and Hebrew races have 2 strands of DNA, double helix, manifested within their bodies on Earth, and 2 strands of manifest within their antiparticle doubles on parallel Earth. The fourth root race, Elanians, now the Atlanteans, had 3-strand DNA, strands 1, 2, and the base codes of 3. Their Brennell cloister having these plus the imprint for 7 through 12. Atlanteans and Brennell would each manifest 1.5 strands within their bodies on Earth and within the parallel system. Root race 3, Lumerians, now Lemanians, had strand 1 and the base codes of strand 2. Their Antarian cloister had these plus the imprint for 7 through 12. All of the races of the second seeding carried trace codes of the Pleiadian Syrian Dagos. Races of the second and third seeding, like their ancestors of the first seeding, also carried grounding codes within their operational DNA strands, which contained partial frequency patterns for each of the 12 dimensions within the 12-strand Tyrannusium imprint. The grounding codes allowed each race to manifest with some degree of 3-dimensional physical matter density and also allowed for transmutation of the physical matter particles once the overtone activation codes were operational. Though all the races carried the grounding codes, not all could activate them because of the seal of Amenti. As long as the seal of Amenti, the missing 6 overtone of the first DNA strand, was contained in their morphogenetic pattern, none of the races could activate the grounding codes of the higher dimensions, as races 3 through 5 of the second and third seeding would be born with the seals of Palador and Amenti. Only those whose imprint contained the 4th DNA strand, the 5th and 6th root races, had the potential to activate all of the grounding codes to ascend. We're going to see too that this is also referring to why the indigo race lines and those that have been called on the indigo 1, 2, or 3 missions are so important. What that 6th overtone was really about. The 5th root race, which was also born with the seal of Amenti, held the hope of activating the grounding codes. If they could fully assemble their 4th DNA strand, this would give them the astral plane D4 mobility of consciousness through which they could pass into their cloister morphogenetic field on the astral plane, then merge with their double there, through which the seal of Amenti could release from strand 1. Then strands 2 and 3 could plug into their doubles and into strand 4. Once strands 1 through 4 plugged into each other, the matter particles could begin to fuse within their antiparticles, which could activate or fire the 5th, 6th, and 7th grounding codes, allowing the body to fully transmute through the blue flame and the halls of Amenti to reappear on Tara. The 6th and 7th root races and their cloisters carried the remaining 5th and 6th DNA strands of the 12-strand package. Neither of these races entered full manifestation during the 2nd and 3rd seedings. The 6th root race are the Muvarians. Their cloister is the Melchisedeks. They will assemble DNA strand number 5, corresponding to the 5th dimensional frequencies, and represent the transitional race through which the Earth's ascension passage into merger with Tara. The Melchisedeks are a blended race carrying various racial strains. Though they represent the cloister that originally began the yellow-skinned races on Earth, they are not limited to manifesting through this racial line. Melchisedeks appear within strains of all the races as they became involved as a host matrix surrogate morphogenetic field for many of the races towards the end of the 2nd seeding. The Melchisedeks carry DNA strands 1 through 4, as well as the base codes of 5, plus the imprint for strands 7 through 12. They are free of the seals of palador and Amenti, and can thus undergo full transmutation of bodily form in order to ascend, if they are able to fully activate the base tones within their 5th strand. Because of their advanced genetic package, the Melchisedeks are able to pass through the blue flame of the halls of Amenti and experience teleportation through the portals into the Terran environment. The Melchisedeks assisted in repairing genetic digression toward the end of the 2nd seeding, becoming one of the host matrix families, then began their race birthing cycle through the 3rd seeding. The first wave of Melchisedeks appeared about 35,000 years ago, the second wave about 3,500 years ago, and the third wave began about 250 years ago and still continues today. The family of the Templar Melchisedeks established the Essene Brotherhood and the priesthoods of the Melchisedek, a priesthood that still exists on Earth today. The lineage of the Essenes was one of the 25 families within the Melchizedek cloister, descendants of the first wave of the Melchizedek cycle. The Melchizedeks assisted the Hebrew cloister of Root Race 5 in repairing genetic damage at the end of the 2nd seeding. Then during the 3rd seeding, the Templar Melchizedeks once again intervened, creating a mixed cloister race carrying the genetic codes of both lines, which accelerated the evolutionary potentials of the Hebrew and the Aryan races. This mixed cloister breeding would later become a major problem for the descendants of this lineage. Due to events that transpired 10,000 years ago during the 3rd seeding, the mixed cloister, the Hebrew Melchizedek race, became known as the Hebrew race during the 2nd and 3rd seedings. The Essenes, Templar Melchizedeks, Hebrew, and Christian lineages of the 3rd seeding, including those of present-day Earth, all carry this genetic advancement. And following the events of 8,000 BC, 10,000 years ago, those affiliated with the Templar Melchizedeks would also carry a 4th and great genetic burden. So I want to just kind of touch on this super quickly within here, because what we're realizing is that each of these energies, as we're birthing in, we're here to be, again, repairing this genetic damage that is happening. But this is also a way for you to start to understand why you feel different. This is also a way for us to start to understand the magical abilities that the future generation, so our children, great-grandchildren, the young ones that are being born today, what their gifts and capabilities are going to be. We want them to be so much more than us. We want them to be on fire, wired in, activated, and we don't want them to really just be going with the same old things as before. So we're going to get to see that within here, it's blended in this wording, but she's talking again about all kinds of genetic mutations that are happening. So we also now have 2 different cloister races that have now blended together. The Melchizedeks have now blended, the Hebrew and Melchizedek have blended. So this is going to be the Aryan root race blending with it, right? So now as you get to look at this, we're going to start to see that even as this genetic digression goes, this is where we're going to start to see a lot more of the wars and the digression starting to just build up all over again on the planet. What I do want to share is that if you read between the lines, it's not even that much in between the lines. We're going to realize that even every time the entire root race or seeded race line has been destroyed, it says it very clear in here. Many, many, many souls made it through the halls of Amenti. So it isn't, you know, we can look at it as the glass half full or the glass half empty. And it is difficult for us being here in this incarnation sometimes to actually sometimes see, oh, that's so amazing. Look at how many souls have actually truly been rescued through these missions. Because we're like, well, I'm still here. But the invitation that is, as you get to see this energy, is that we want to recognize that no matter what we keep seeing when it seems so hopeless or helpless at these different times, we want to start to let this information help us see the bigger picture so that we can see the greater purpose and all that we are doing. This is hopefully what is coming through. So now let's tie in a little bit more on these religions that we are affected by. The spiritual influence of the Templar Melchizedeks has touched all of the major Christian and Jewish persuasions, and they played an instrumental role in the formation of the modern-day Mormon Christian faith. The Melchizedeks are the primary force within the present times on Earth, as they are now within the third wave of their race birthing. The Melchizedeks hold within their lineage the promise of ascension, even more so than do the fifth Aryan and Hebrew races. But not all Melchizedeks presently bear the same genetic coding. This is so key. We don't want to just hear the word Melchizedek and go like, oh, that's, you know, oh, there's so much distortion. I get a little flustered. I can't even say it. So please, let's definitely dive into where some of these genetic variations have taken place. Two primary groups of Melchizedeks have evolved out of the original Melchizedek cloister morphogenetic field: the cloistered family of Melchizedek and the Templar Melchizedeks. The difference between their spiritual teachings denotes not only a philosophical preference, but also a genetic propensity that came into being 10,000 years ago. Spiritual teachings that have been either directly or indirectly influenced by the Templar Melchizedeks will have a distinctly patriarchal slant, often promoting gender subservience, elitist philosophy, and subjugation of Earth's elemental kingdoms. These attributes of the Templar Melchizedeks were not originally part of the Melchizedek cloister strain, but rather evolved through extraterrestrial distortion. Breath, so that you can really just take that in. The cloistered family Melchizedeks, on the other hand, are considered to be the pure strain of this race. The Templar Melchizedeks, though, and their descendants are a mutation of that strain. In the following pages, we will explore how that distinction came to be, as the duality within the Melchizedek race has created an intense hidden undercurrent within the ideologies of present-day Earth, greatly influencing the development of many of your world religions. And this distinction also directly affects the genetic code and ascension process of descendants of the Melchizedek races. The Melchizedeks of both Templar and cloister persuasion draw their name from their original genetic affiliation to the Terneuzium I subrace Melchizedek from Tara, whose name also denotes their genetic affiliation with the entity gestalt Melchizedek from the realities beyond the galactic core. There are many divergent races bearing traces of the Melchizedek line throughout all of the harmonic universes. Members of the priesthood of Melchizedek who symbolize, or pardon, let me read that one more time. members of the priesthood of Melchisedek who specialize in dimensional ascension training are not necessarily direct members of the Melchizedek race lines, but often work under the teaching programs of that cloister. During the third seeding about 65,000 years ago, the Melchizedeks appeared in Atlantean culture. And prior to the sinking of the Atlantean islands, 30,000 to 11,500 years ago. They then retreated to an underground haven deep below the Earth's crust within the third dimensional frequency modulation zone that exists between Earth and her antiparticle double. This area is also known as the inner Earth. The large civilizations exist in these lands since times prior to Atlantis, when the Melchizedeks and others began to retreat from surface life. These underground civilizations exist to this day, and occasionally members interact with the surface Earth through the hidden caverns that link Earth's surface to the modulation zone of the inner Earth. Both cloister family Melchizedeks and Templar Melchizedeks reside within these lands under the primary guardianship of the speakers of the blue flame and Melchizedek priesthood, and priests of and Mu from Tara. These subterranean lands were originally called Arathoth, later Argathoth, and since about 3,000 years ago have been referred to as Agartha. Whew. The cloister family of Melchizedeks, Templar Melchizedeks, the staff of Amenti, the speakers of the blue flame, and the Templar and axiom seals of the Eye of Elohim and the 666 symbolism. I'm going to take just one moment. How's everybody doing? You guys up for one more section this evening? The next chapter 3 actually starts at page 49. I'm not sure that we'll make it to that with today's reading, but just checking in. How's everybody doing? Oh, so good to see you guys here. Love you guys so much. All right, so you can see by this title, we're going to dive into some heavy things here. 10,000 years ago to 3,500 years ago. As we have mentioned, the first full wave of the Melchizedek's birthing cycle began during the third seeding about 35,000 years ago. The second wave about 3,500 years ago, and the last about 250 years ago, and continues on today. During their first appearance, they created the priesthood of Melchizedek on Earth, a spiritual organization specializing in the process of ascension, which over time developed a strong elitist, sexist, patriarchal slant due to the Atlantean and the Sirian Anunnaki influence. About 32,000 years ago, some of the Melchizedeks joined forces with the matriarchal Taran priesthood of Mu, creating a more balanced Melchizedek priesthood, which more closely followed the teachings of equality promoted in the original Melchizedek priesthood. The balanced Melchizedek priesthood became known as the cloistered family of Melchizedek, for they carried within them the original sacred law of one teachings of the Melchizedek morphogenetic cloister. The egalitarian Melchizedeks became known as the speakers of the blue flame about 10,000 years ago, which was about 8,000 BC, when the priesthood of and the Paladorian Council of Tara transferred Earth's guardianship of the staff of Amenti, the blue flame, and Tara's morphogenetic fields out of the hands of the unbalanced patriarchal Melchizedek priesthood and into the hands of the balanced Melchizedek priesthood. The Taran priests of disassociated themselves from the patriarchal Melchizedeks, attributing their elitist sexist slant to the infiltration of the Syrian Anunnaki cultures, who brought it with them to Atlantia and later Atlantis. The distorted teachings of the original Templar solar initiates, whose elitist, aggressive misuse of power for materialistic gain had accumulated in the cataclysm of Tara 550 million years ago. So just a key, just to dive into that term right there, because we haven't heard this term Templar solar initiates since the first couple pages of this book. And she's bringing it up again The original Templar solar initiates were the ones that were whispering in the ears of these Elenians and causing them to become power hungry. And here we are with them again, their energy, who is very elitist, aggressive. They misuse power for their materialistic gain. And they're the key beings that accumulated the cataclysm of Tara. This transfer of guardianship of the power of the blue flame 10,000 years ago resulted in the instrumentation of 2 more genetic frequency seals being placed upon members of the 6th race Melchisedek cloisters who were associated with Templar distortions of the sacred law of one, and also on any descendants of the Templar Melchizedeks or races who interbred with them and picked up their genetic coding. The Templar seal, as the first alteration became known, was implemented 10,000 years ago and represented a 6th dimensional seal upon the halls or spheres of Amenti. The second Templar sphere was administered about 3,500 years ago when descendants of Templar sealed Melchizedeks infiltrated Egyptian culture and violated the covenant of Palador by opening the D2 Earth portals as a way of orchestrating ascension through the D1 and D2 underworld. Through their misdeeds, many chaotic forces were unleashed upon the earth, and humans with distorted morphogenetic imprints were released from the seals of Palador and Amenti and allowed to pass into Tara. Many tragic events since took place on Tara as a result of this misadventure 3,500 years ago, and a 7th dimensional seal was then added to the Templar Melchizedeks who participated in these events. So this is really talking about misusing the dimensional realms, allowing certain energies from certain dimensional realities to then permeate in other realities. And this would be something, kind of one of the things that's coming to mind is this is going to really be that energy of conjuring lower astral beings for self-serving purposes. And the chaos and havoc that wreaks upon humanity with these types of overlays and demonic energies and just these things that really just start to cause so much problems. So we're seeing again, we have another seal. I want to give you guys an imprint of just an impression to kind of keep in the back of your mind of this word seal. A lot of what we are doing through our healing and repair is removing Jehovian seals, Templar seals, crucifixion seals. We're doing the work, but to go in and start to remove these seals that have been placed to cap us. And when you are holding your true lineage codes within you and your true alignment to your higher self and your divine purpose, you can begin to utilize your connection to your higher self to begin to create that reconnection to dissolve these seals. So, this is a huge part of the work that I feel so blessed to do, is actually to do these seal removal, seal clearing, helping individuals find where these caps are within us on our energy systems. They are in very specific places in our body and in our energy fields. And it takes us being able to go in there and move them for them to disappear. A lot of times it's not just that they're going to disappear. It's about bringing your awareness to them and then doing the conscious movement of these seals in order to get them to let your energy flow again. But we're going to see that all these seals have been created in order to keep certain disruptions that were taking place, kind of to try to fix keep trying to fix the wheel to keep it going, right? But we're also going to see that there are a massive amount of seals, crucifixion seals, breeder seals, implants, superimpositions that were placed on us, where we're going to see these negative alien agendas, these negative race lines, these service to self-aligned beings started to use these same technologies as a way to cap us so that we wouldn't awaken to our highest potential. So I do want to just invite you, if you hear some of these things, you can, in your own meditation to your higher self, start connecting to identifying, to scan your bioregenesis vehicle and see if there's any of these seals within there, and you can call upon your spiritual healing team to assist you with beginning to do that. Or if you need assistance, by all means, either reach out or find someone that does this work, because this is vital. Or if you want to learn how to do it, it is also very special to learn how to do for others. So within this, as we get to look at this, both these Templar seals made physical ascension through the halls of Amenti impossible for those who carried this genetic configuration. And only under certain circumstances could the soul essence pass through the blue flame. Those bearing the Templar axiom seal could eventually pass into Tara and enter incarnations within the 6 races, but the Templar axiom seal did not allow them to transmute into their immortal 7th race bodies. The Templar axioms were destined to repeat innumerable incarnational cycles upon the earth in order to clean up the mess that they had made by releasing the chaos and the chaotic forces of D2. Only the Elohim, the anxious, and the Axios, I've read anxious, let me read this again. Only the Elohim, the Axios entity family, and Ra confederacy families of the Azurites and Ammonites from the metagalactic core, or the Brennau entities from Harmonic Universe 5, had the power to release the Templar axiom seal, and would do so only for humans who gain their favor through serving the truth of the sacred law of one. So the holding that truth of the sacred law of one is really, when we understand at the higher vibrational level, higher dimensional beings, they don't have to ask us anything. They see right through us. They can see all the layers of our body. They know what we're aligned to. They know what our heart is aligned to. And what is our ethics? What are we aligned to? Who are we choosing to be in service to? And this is really why we have so many of these beautiful wisdom paths that teach us, even if you look at the 8-fold path, right speech, right mind, right thought, right action, all of these things are just about the self-awareness, self-actualizing of our purpose. And when we start to be that, our heart naturally aligns and we have massive forces. Look at this. We have the Elohim, the Axios entity family, the Ra Confederacy family, the Azurites, which is massive because that's the Indigo family lineage line. The Ammonites, all from these beings are all from the metagalactic core. So these are just incredibly advanced race lines of beings that have the ability to be at such a vibration that it basically just dissipates these seals. So when we work with these types of beings, or when we work primarily, my main thing is I like to tell people, connect to your higher self, connect to your higher self. Then from your higher self, greet and meet all of these other entities and beings, because through your higher self, you will be able to know truth of who is truly serving the highest purpose of this mission, this rescue mission, this Amenti mission, if you will. And so within this, as we understand this, we're getting to see how important it is, our alignment to these higher ethics. So as we come to the last little bit here, the Templar axiom seal became as a curse upon the human lineage, and this distortion has been passed on genetically. This is the more of the family tree stuff that we are working with, that even if you feel your soul is not connected to these things, we are still incarnating in physical reality in these bioregenesis vehicles. Therefore, distortions get passed down genetically. Family curses get passed down genetically. And so it's another invitation I say to you guys to just you can start to go in and just begin to dissolve these types of things within any holding of your life, so that they are not something that is afflicting or affecting you any longer. As the Melchisedeks and their Hebrew hybrids interbred with other racial strains, the Templar seals were passed on, in whole or in part, to incarnate souls who did not have this proper affiliation, or this prior affiliation. Fragments of the Templar seals that passed on genetically created a variety of incarnational and ascensional problems for everyone involved with them. The seals were to remain intact for those whose prior affiliations with the Templar solar initiates, Templar Melchizedeks, warranted such security measures. But attempts were made to help purge unintended Templar seal holders of their genetic burden. The Elohim, the Syrian Council of Harmonic Universe 2, and the Paladorians all assisted in this plan, offering ascension teachings through which the burdened races could purge their genetic code of the Templar seals. Templar seals can only be removed when this is approved by the Ra Confederacy and the Axius, Ammonite, and Azurite Gestalt families, the entities who orchestrated the Templar sealing in order to protect Earth and Tara. The Templar seals still affect a majority of the present human population, and the Elohim, Pleiadians, Syrian Council, and other assistants from higher harmonic universes still work to assist unintended Templar seal bearers. Through spiritual training, humans are led to at least a rudimentary understanding of the sacred law of one. And once this education has taken hold, the Elohim or other helpers take the incarnate through the astral planes. If the incarnate's fourth DNA strand is plugged into a meeting station within the 8th dimension metagalactic core, there's the incarnate's personal morphogenetic field, where it is evaluated to determine if Templar sealing is in order as a planetary security measure, and if the seals are unwarranted, the Elohim petition the Ra Confederacy to remove any trace of the Templar seals. If the Ra Confederacy agrees, the seals are removed and the incarnate's consciousness is allowed to pass through the 8th dimension where the DNA imprint of the morphogenetic field is repaired. The 8th dimensional meeting place and passageway into the metagalactic core is often referred to as the Eye of Elohim or the galactic core. Humans not bearing Templar seal distortion can pass through this dimensional portal once they have fully evolved their 7th DNA strand. Those bearing the Templar seals must be assisted by the Elohim, Azurites, Ammonites, or their many helpers in order to pass through the 8th dimensional to heal their DNA of Templar distortion. Others who rightfully bear the Templar seals can find freedom through working out the lessons of love, unity, and equality as taught through the sacred law of one. When these lessons are learned, the incarnate's consciousness is no longer a threat to interplanetary security, and assistance in lifting the Templar seals will be provided. Though we will not address the mechanics by which the Templar seals operate, we will provide a bit of information regarding the DNA strands affected. The Templar seal is a 6th dimensional seal affecting the 2nd, 4th, and 5th DNA strands. The 6th base tone of strand 2, the 6th overtone of the strand 4, and the 12th overtone of the strand 5 were all removed from the morphogenetic field of the Templar Melchizedek cloister. So I want to take one pause there really quick. So what it's saying is that a few of the notes were taken out. So a few of the key pieces, if you think about certain pieces, they'll have if you see people with a vehicle, they'll go in and take out particular wires, and then this way the vehicle won't be able to either drive or operate at its full capacity. But one of the things I want to kind of pass on to you guys within here is for you to use your own discernment as you get to hear this, because again, a lot of this verbiage could almost sound like something's trying to control us, right? Oh, like, are you worthy to pass through? But what I want to kind of help us understand is that when we are talking about beings from the metagalactic core, these are pure geomantic, geometry, sacred light, consciousness fields of beings. So what it's really saying is that it's scanning through our energy field, and if we are in alignment to our original blueprint, then we just pass right through. But if there are distortions within our field, and distortions really come from our consciousness, Are we still wanting revenge? Do we still have desires? Are we still holding grudges? Are we still angry or blaming our whomever for certain things, right? If we are still hanging on to stuff, we are still hanging on to crystallized miasmas within our field, which are also embedding within some of these patriarchal energies. Some of these things from these Templar seals, right? What the Templar seals are on guard for. But if that's not our character, it isn't about a control. It's really about just these stations or these stargates, especially when you think of Ontarians. If you think about say the Antares Stargate, if you think about the when we are really looking at this energy of the galactic core and this 8th dimensional meeting place or Stargate, this is also something within the Keylontic or the 12 tree grid tree of life that attunes to that belt of Orion, right? So we're looking at this as a universal body, and that through the journey of our soul, through these light strands or these light fields, we're just seeing at what level is our consciousness in alignment to this unity field that we want to reemerge with. That's one of the key things within there. And so another key thing I want to bring a key into it, because Elohim, when we look at Elohim, it can have a lot of trigger around it. Also, when we say Azurite or Ammonite, we're not talking about religions or races or beings here on the earth. We are literally talking about beings that are at a completely other harmonic universe. And so these Elohim are coming from harmonic universe 3. These are beings that are not the same as the Belial Elohim. These are not the same as the Elohim referred to in the Bible. I really want to just kind of make that one last point within there. So when these lessons are learned, the incarnate's consciousness is no longer a threat to interplanetary security, and assistance in lifting the Templar seals will be provided. So it's really just saying, when we have really aligned ourselves to the lessons of love, unity, equality, but not in I need to fight for it, or I need to defend it, or I need to make other people learn it. This is unconditional love. This is non-judgment. So when we step into this non-polarized state of our consciousness of recognizing the all and all, this starts to tap us into that unconditional, non-judgmental love, that unconditional witnessing. So though we will not address it again, I'm going to skip down over here because I already read that and that was a lot. So it's again talking about the certain strands and overtones and undertones within the strands were pulled out, and that's what the Templar seal is. It's basically the unplugging of key spark plugs within our DNA system, if you will. A portion of the Melchisedek cloister morphogenetic field containing the seal was removed from the sphere of Amenti and placed within the planet core Alcyone within the Pleiadian star system, which required the seal bearer to evolve within the Pleiadian star system for a time as pure consciousness before being able to ascend through the sphere of Amenti to rebirth within the 6th race on Tara. The 4th strand distortion of the seal created a polarization with the 4th heart chakra, which corresponds to 4th dimensional frequencies, and a barrier within the nadial capsule that separates the mental and astral awareness and separates the 3rd mental body and 4th astral body levels within the auric field. It limited astral travel to the lower astral planes. It created a separation within the astral awareness, creating a lower and higher astral identity. The lower astral identity became known as the evil twin or the dweller on the threshold within some of the religious teachings. The 2nd strand distortion created a diversion within the D2 elemental emotional body, which created 2 levels of the subconscious mind, a higher level and a lower level. The higher level held identity fragments of the subpersonalities, while the lower level created a chaotic emotional force that became known as the shadow self. There's our shadow work, exaggerating the human's primitive emotional impulses. The second strand distortion also made it impossible for these humans to successfully interbreed with other species from Earth or from the stars. It created an amplified blockage between the first, second, and third chakras, blocking out clear communication with the body consciousness and with the Earth's elemental kingdoms. The fifth strand distortion made the physical earthly body unable to transmute or ascend to the consciousness that would have to rebirth into the 6 races on Tara to continue evolution. So I'm actually going to pause right there because it's going to start to get into some of the 666 info. So we're going to pause on page 35. Whew, you guys have been here with me for a little while. I love you guys so much. Definitely. So I want to give you guys just some time to ingest some of this because we read quite a bit this evening. We're going to be following through. Please just check the post. And then once this is posted, you can go to the very beginning. It's going to show all of our next readings. We're going to just keep on going through this, you guys. So with so much love, thank you guys all for being here. Love you. Sunny, oh my gosh, love you. So happy that you're here. Wendy, so grateful to share this with you. Nirvana Rising, Wendy, Shelly, Kay, Kimberly, Danielle, thank you guys so much for being here this evening. And I just share so much love. I can't get my thing to move, so I can scroll up and just give some more love one more time to Lavender Sky Panther, to Goddess Essence Energy, Kimberly, Beth, Darlene, Robin, Shelly. I love you guys all so much. Thank you guys for sharing this. So to each and every one of you, I will just invite you to join in at the next time. And please, if stuff is triggering, stuff is coming up, questions are coming as we go through this, please just type them into the chat. I'll do my best to get to them as quick as possible to answer what I can, or we can answer it in the next reading. So love you guys so much. Thank you.